2023, day number 12. And in this episode, I have a chat with Joseph Ryan-Hughes, who is the writer of We Are Monsters, a new play that is part of a double bill that is just perfect for Halloween. We Are Monsters tells the story of Caitlin and Kyle, who enjoy playing pranks and scaring campers on Lake Windermere. But their harmless fun turns into trouble when they're tracked down by a nearby ghost whisperer. We Are Monsters is produced by Just a Regular House, and it shows this Halloween in the one and only basement of the Barons Court Theatre as part of a double bill of two brand new dark comedies that are fearful, funny and filled with ghost stories. Directed by Wyatt, We Are Monsters runs from Tuesday to Saturday from the 24th of October to the 4th of November at 7:30pm in the Barons Court Theatre in London. It was an absolute pleasure and a joy to speak to Joe, and I also spoke to Connor from Glass, which is the other show that is taking place on the same night, and that episode will be released next week. If you are in the London area, or you are going to be in the London area around the Halloween period from the 24th of October to the 4th of November, it is definitely worth checking these plays out. Plays that Just a Regular House have done previously have received great critical acclaim and been really well received. This is a lovely way to spend an evening. You've got two sort of 45-minute to an hour long plays, and on Halloween night they're having a big fancy dress party and you get to get dressed up and have a party afterwards, and it sounds like it's going to be an absolute ball. I am planning on going and I can't wait to go. The tickets and the links for everything that you need to know are going to be in the description of this episode, so please feel free to book your tickets. I'd love to see you there if you're going to be there, and it's just a lovely way to spend Halloween. So the interview with Joe was done over StreamYard, so the audio is slightly different to normal. It's perfectly listenable, don't worry, but just in case you're thinking, wow, this sounds different than it normally does, it's because it was recorded over StreamYard. I hope you enjoy it. I am joined in my virtual studio by the wonderful Joe. Joe, can you tell me a bit about yourself? Who are you? What do you do? Why are you here?
Hello, my name is Joe, and yeah, I'm an actor, I'm a writer, and I have a little theatre company called Just a Regular House, and we're producing a show over Halloween this year. That's what we do.
Before we get into talking about the show and your life as a producer slash actor slash writer, I've got a very important question, and it is the one question that everybody wants to know the answer to, and that is, what is your favourite horror film and why?
Yeah, so I think so. I remember being very scared with a bunch of friends watching Sinister at school, and but I wouldn't call Sinister my favorite, but I definitely remember that being like the earliest really like classic horror film that I remember watching and all piled into a room and getting really scared by. But that wouldn't be a favorite. I loved Nope, that came out by Jordan Peele. I thought that was brilliant, but also wouldn't necessarily call that like a traditional horror film either. You know, almost like a western, that film. But if I had to say like on rewatchability, like I would happily watch right now, I really love the first Saw film, and I would I would say that is. I think the Saw franchise gets a bad rep, and I do think for a good reason, because the other films I don't think are very good. But the first one, standalone, I really like it, and I think it's a great film. So I would call that one of my favorite horror films.
Interesting. You're probably the first person I've ever interviewed that said the first Saw, but I totally see it, because it really was about getting to the depths of the dilemma and
Mm.
trying to get into that human need to survive. But the rest of them, I agree, it kind of goes downhill. It gets a bit gore porny. But I
Yeah,
feel like the first one was brilliant.
yeah, I agree. I mean, I haven't watched because they're bringing out new ones now, aren't they? Spiral and things like that. I haven't watched any of those with Chris Rock. But I remember loving the first one so much and really trying to like believe in the franchise. And I
Yeah.
watched like 1, 2, 3, all the way up to like I think, and I got to the one before the final film, and I was like, you know what? I just can't do it anymore. This isn't good anymore. But
No, you just
yeah,
break up with the franchise. You're like, I'm sorry, we had a good run.
yeah,
It's actually
I
not
don't
me,
know.
it's definitely you.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
So, can you tell me a little bit about We Are Monsters, your play that you are bringing to London this Halloween? What's the general premise?
Yeah, so We Are Monsters, it's part of a double bill, two short plays that are going on over Halloween. And We Are Monsters is a play that I've written that it's about like 35, 40 minutes, but it's about two siblings, a brother and a sister, in Lake Windermere, and they sort of like to dress up in costumes, these seaweed costumes, and go around and prank nearby campers around Lake Windermere. So they like to steal their people's things and write messages in the sand and just sort of like just creep and scare people in order to sort of become part of the lore and the mythos around Lake Windermere, because there's loads of myths and legends that are in that area. And they love that, but they want to be part of it. So they're sort of making their own story that the locals can be like, oh, have you seen these creepy things that are happening around? And it's like, yeah, that's us. They like that. But the play begins after a particular night of pranking of the brother and the sister. They come back to this cabin and they've been followed back to the cabin by this ghost whisperer. And the ghost whisperer thinks he's meeting two actual spirits, and he's sort of confronting them about what they're doing. And the play sort of lifts off from there and questions, what it's like to not respect the myths and legends of a place, and the ghosts and things that are very real and can follow you places if you don't respect them. So it's sort of about that.
So why did you choose to write a ghost story for theatre?
So our theatre company did a play last year, just off the bat of Halloween. So it was the 1st of November was our first show. And this wasn't really a spooky show, but it definitely had spooky elements to it. And we really liked it. And then when we got around to this year, and we were thinking about what show we can do around October, November, and we really thought, why don't we really lean into the Halloween side of stuff and do a show that's set that's over Halloween. So we have first week is before Halloween, second week is after, and we write two brand new stories that are spooky, that are like dark comedies, but also kind of really lean into that ghost story factor. That was kind of like the idea, and I sort of had an idea rattling around in my head about Lake Windermere. I think it is just a place that has a lot of history and mythos about it, that I knew there was a story in there that I wanted to tell. And then as soon as I started sort of doing a bit of research about ghost stories there, the play kind of just flowed out of it, because a lot of the ghost stories are mentioned in the play. So yeah, I think that's where it came from, wanting to write a scary story that's also quite funny. But yeah, setting it at Lake Windermere, it was something that almost felt very natural to me because of the scare factor at Lake Windermere.
So did you have a particular ghost story that scared you as a child?
The first thing that comes to mind is a story that my sister told me, and I've never been able to retell the story, that I think was as scary as she told it to me. So I don't even know if it's still scary, but it's like it was I think it was, she called it like the man with the red eye, or the red eye, or something like that. And it was just about like this regular old guy goes to I think a hotel, and the concierge says something like, noises happen in the night, don't get out of bed if you hear them, just stay in your bed the whole night. And then obviously he wakes up one night in the hotel room and he hears the noises, and then he looks out the window, gets out of bed, which he shouldn't have done, and he sees like some guy with a big old bulging red eye, and he sort of looks at him. And I remember my sister telling me the story, and then he would wake up at like another hour, and the noise had gotten closer, and eventually he finds out that the guy is sort of walking outside his hotel room, and he looks through the keyhole, and all he sees through the keyhole is red. So as if the big bulging the red eye of this man was looking directly through the keyhole right at him. And I remember as a kid, obviously I didn't ghost story tell that story, but when my sister told it, it terrified me. And I think from then on, I've always been, I have loved getting scared, and ghost stories and Halloween has been a real thing. So, but that story, I don't even know if it exists in if I was to Google the story, I don't know if I'd find it. I have no idea. It's just this thing my sister told me, and it is still with me now.
I feel like the story does exist. I think you'll find it easily, because I've definitely heard some version of that before with the red eye and the keyhole. So
Oh,
it does exist, and I
oh,
bet
great.
if you go and find the story, you'll be back to sleepless nights.
Yeah, I think so. That's good to
Um,
hear, though.
Yeah, and your sister isn't just a scare story genius. So in terms of Lake Windermere, because your play is obviously set in Lake Windermere, which is a very beautiful part of England. I've never personally been, but I feel like I need to add it to my list. Do you have a favorite legend or story about Lake Windermere specifically?
Yeah, when I was reading up about just ghost stories around there, one that I read up quite a lot about. I really liked it. It was called the Spectral Army. They called it. It's basically this army of ghosts that you can see every. I think it might be every midsummer um, day or something like that. I think that they appear one particular day every year, and the first person who saw it was just like one guy, and he was like standing on a hill. And then I think Blencathra was the name of the fell side, or the hill. And you're sort of looking at Blencathra, and he is able to see this army of ghosts sort of march across the hill. And then when he went back and told people that he saw it, everyone was like, "Ah, you're drunk. You know, no one believes you." But then, like the next year, two more people saw the same thing on like that same day, and then also people were skeptical, like, "Oh, I don't know how this is happening." So then, a few years later, quite a lot of people all got together to see if the spectral army they would see it, and they've all been dubbed as sober and of sound mind, and they were all standing looking at Blencathra, and then they all saw it. They all saw this like army of ghosts. It's described as like 5 people deep, march across the hillside, and there were horses as well, like cavalry, and they're all with swords and armor, and they just watched them walk from like one part of the hill to the other. Um, and I think what I really liked about that was because of this recurring aspect of more and more people seeing it. I thought was quite scary, because I mean, the fact that is everyone in cahoots who's on that hill saying, "Oh yeah, we definitely saw it," or you don't know, but it's and it seems to have been happening for quite a long span of years, because you have to wait a following year to be able to see it again. So it sort of has life, this story, that people want to see it. The idea of ghosts in general, they're sort of in purgatory almost, aren't they? That's like one idea of it. They've been bound to eternity of like walking the earth as a ghost. And it's usually like single ghosts that you see. And I
Mm.
think what I liked about this, the fact that it's an army of ghosts. Like, what has this huge group done to for all eternity, be an army together? It kind of reminded me of like the skeleton crew in Pirates of the Caribbean. They can't taste, they can't eat, but they're all together in this curse. And I just wondered if that was also part of the what was happening with those ghosts.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. I can't even imagine what it must have been like, right, to be part of that big group of people on the hill who are watching this. This guy that you're like, sure, yeah, you saw an army. Do you know what? We'll all go out and see. Can we see it? And then all of a sudden it's like, oh no, that's there. Oh no,
Yeah.
we're watching this happen. Because it just fundamentally it changes life for you, because
Mm.
suddenly it's like, oh, it's not just we're here and that's it. There is more to this than I had anticipated. And I don't think anybody sets out of an evening to have their whole belief system shaken.
Yeah, it's true. Like, if you see that, surely everything changes. You have to
Absolutely, it
rethink
has to.
everything. Mm.
It has to.
It's
Interestingly, in Irish tradition, there's a lot of folklore and a lot of stories, like first-hand witness accounts about seeing armies, but they're fairy armies, kind of
oh
which is weird, like, but
yeah.
armies of fairies going into battle because they battle each other, and they're not like little things, they're human-sized entities. Um, so I think just seeing an army in general, like a ghostly army in general, is incredible. That's
Yeah.
wild.
How do you fight that? It's hard
Where do
enough
you go?
to yeah, hard enough to deal with one ghost. If you got 50 coming at you, what are you gonna do?
Yeah, yeah, and we've all seen Lord of the Rings, all right?
Yeah,
The Ghost Army is if it's not for the Ghost Army, they're not winning, you know?
yeah, exactly. They were the wild card that they needed.
So has working on a ghost story and kind of immersing yourself in all the stories of like Windermere and folklore and legend, has it made you more in touch with your spiritual side? That's a very big question. I guess a part of that question is also, were you a believer beforehand?
You know, it's interesting because I don't know, the word like believer and stuff is, I don't know, it's hard to say because I haven't particularly had a paranormal experience that sort of like, I've had scary things happen, but I feel like a lot of people have those stories where they can say like, I saw a reflection and like I'm not crazy, I definitely saw it. And I love hearing those stories, and like also I don't like go out my way to say like, oh, you're crazy, of course. Why would people lie about certain things if you trust them? They're telling you the truth. So I do think there's things that happen that are kind of unexplainable sometimes, and sometimes the most logical answer is ghosts or is something paranormal, because it is unexplainable. So I think definitely a side of me does believe that there's this world of spirits and things that we don't really know much about. But as far as my experience with it, I haven't had much. But also, I'm not going to be the one that says I definitely don't believe it, because I'm definitely scared of saying that and inviting bad stuff to be happening to me. Working on this as a ghost story, it's funny you should say like, how is it? What's it been like doing that? It's because we were doing a read through of the play not too long ago. I was telling them that, like, actually, by the way, that all the ghost stories that I mentioned are real. The other actor, Moses, says, "Oh, I think we're going to need to have it like a detox after we do the show, because just to get all those things off, because we are dealing with something that is very real, in Lake Windermere, So there was a worry, I guess, but also we're not making fun of them.
Mm.
We're just telling the stories, and I think that's okay. But definitely, as soon as he said like, "Oh, we need a detox," I was like, you know what? I didn't even think that maybe I should have thought twice about retelling some things, but it's all done with the respect.
And I think there's a lot of people in the paranormal community who believe that. So I'm very skeptical. I
Mm,
love ghost stories and I really enjoy them, but I also am firmly on the side that you should approach these things with skepticism. But a lot of people do believe that when you talk about these things openly, when you tell stories, you're inviting it in. And you know
mm.
what? I feel like Moses has just set the tone there to be like, well, at the end of this, we all need to be exercised. Okay, that's what needs to happen
Yeah,
because we're inviting
exactly.
all this in. I honestly would be sitting around that read through table going, well, I'm not doing the show because I've got enough things in my life without bringing an army of spirits to my doorstep. Okay,
Yeah, exactly. You get a knock on the door, you're like, oh no, here we go.
why do you think personally that ghost stories have this universal popularity? Because I feel like there's so many people who are staunch non-believers but
Mm.
who also still love a ghost story. And then, of course, the other end of the spectrum is people who fully believe and equally love ghost stories. So, why do you think they have such universal popularity?
Well, they do that. Every culture has ghost stories, and so it's funny that people love hearing them, and they continue to love hearing ghost stories. So I think there's a universal appeal because there is, deep down, there's a side of that kind of stuff that is sort of unexplained. We don't know the rules. I think, in horror films like The Conjuring or The Insidious, a lot of it is these people working out like how to defeat the ghost or how to get back, how to win, at the end of the film. So they have to like work out what the rules are, but like in order to do that. But we're dealing with like with like a magical world essentially. So how do you know what those rules could be to deal with? So I think humans are naturally curious. So because there's no definitive answer to that, that's why there is this thing of people can understand, like, yeah, there's this magical thing, we don't know what it is, and it's a ghost. It's a thing that we don't know the answer for, but we'll have like an image in our minds of what it should look like or how it should affect us. So I think that's why we keep on going back to ghost stories. And also there's a sense of fear, isn't it, when you consume scary stuff. That's why people like it. They like getting scared, or some people do. But it also gives you a bit of safety because it's like, oh, at least it's not happening to me.
Yeah.
So there's that factor, I think, as well.
Yeah, I always think that people love horror films because it gives you exactly that. It gives you the chance to enact all of these anxieties and fears and
Mm.
worry in a totally safe space. You know that when once that film ends, you can go upstairs to bed, or you can sit and watch cartoons and get rid of all of the scary stuff from your brain. Yeah, I know you've sort of alluded to this briefly, but have you ever had a paranormal experience that you'd like to share? Or do you have somebody in your life that's had a paranormal experience? Because I can only assume, right, that when you're working on something that's adjacent to ghosts, that people now tell you their ghost stories all the time, or they do that thing where
Yeah.
they go, "No, no, I don't believe in ghosts, but this one time."
Yeah, well, I was speaking with a few work friends yesterday about ghost stories and things, and then they started to tell me their own experiences. And someone did tell me they were doing a shoot in a castle, and they said that they were getting their makeup done for the shoot, and they saw in the window like kind of those in what's the film called, the Jack Nicholson film, and you see the two twins,
Oh, The Shining.
um The Shining. Yeah, they kind of see like that kind of image, right, in a window. And like when you hear that, you're like, yeah, okay, it's just your brain playing tricks in you, right? Like you see two twin like girls or something like that in the window. Clearly, like, I don't know, you're in a castle, you're the brain's a very powerful thing. So she said, yeah, like it was. I saw that. Then the makeup people said, no, like we don't have any kids on set, that kind of thing. And then what happened later in the shoot was, I think she said that they all had like weapons, like fake guns, but they couldn't fire. But then the one guy went to the loo, um, and he came back into the room like white as a sheet. And they were like, "What's wrong?" And he said, "I was having a wee, and then suddenly the gun just fired." And they said there was no rounds in the gun. It doesn't shoot anything. And he just said, yeah, it just fired while I was having a wee. So like those I heard that story yesterday, and I think as soon as you involve like more people into a story, and like you definitely
Mm.
think something's happening. If it affects more than one people, like with the Spectral Army, as soon as a load of people are all watching something, I mean, of course, they can all be in cahoots. They can all be like, "Oh, wouldn't it be funny?" Or it's if we all see the same thing. But I don't know. As soon as more people are involved, it does make me go like, "Oh, that is a bit scary, actually."
And I think when more people are involved with something, it's much harder to lie. The more
Yeah.
people that are involved, the more likely somebody is going to tell the truth. That's just human nature. That's just the way we are.
Without doubt. But as far as it goes for me, I think like I've had like sleep paralysis before, and I've had like a night terror as a kid. And like as far as like there's not necessarily paranormal stuff, but definitely those fears kind of because you're so young. Well, sleep paralysis not so much, but when I had that night terror, like I remember like it still stays with me now, and it still like gives me ever so often. It'll give me the fear again. Like for example, in Nope, there's that bit where, not to spoil anything, but they're in the belly of the beast at that
Mm.
point, and there's sort of like the white sheets are around them, and I remember that just immediately reminded me of my night terror, so it kind of evoked a fear in me, because it reminded me of that memory, and it's not necessarily paranormal, but it definitely of like what fear is. It kind of comes out of you, so it's yeah, perhaps not ghostly, but definitely makes me scared. So I don't know if that invites paranormal ghost things or not.
If you're somebody who suffers from sleep paralysis, there is a documentary called The Nightmare. I'm just going to say that it will traumatize you, but it is a documentary and it's called The Nightmare and it's all about sleep paralysis. And I've never had sleep. Well, I had a sort of a mild version of sleep paralysis once in my life, but I don't suffer from it. And I watched The Nightmare and I was like, well, I'm never sleeping again because I'm not taking the risk.
Yeah,
But it's
I
very
think
good.
I think I saw. Don't they all like they see the same kind of things, but they're
Yes.
completely. Yes, yeah.
Yeah, that bit of
It
sleep
does sound.
paralysis really scares me. So, our final question, and arguably the
Oh.
most important question:
hmm
why should people come and see We Are Monsters?
It's a brand new show, and it is a funny show. It's a dark comedy. So we've been talking a lot about ghosts and spookums and things like that, and it's based around ghost stories and being scared and what fear is, but also like at its heart, it's a brother and sister quibbling. It's a really funny show, and if you like to get scared and you like to laugh, it is absolutely the show for you. And the best part of it is as well is that you get to watch two because it's a double bill. So you get to watch one. It's a nice storybook end. It finishes, and then you have a little interval. Go upstairs to the pub, grab a drink, and then come back down and watch another show, another spooky show. So it's a great day out and perfect to get into like the Halloween spirit of things. And who doesn't like to laugh and get a bit scared?
Can I just say as well, 35 to 40 minutes is just the perfect length for a show.
Yeah, I think so. It's
For me who struggles with attention. I mean, I love theater in my soul, but sometimes I get to a point in a show where I'm like, there needs to be an interval or this needs to end because I'm getting itchy sitting in my seat and I can't stay here for much longer. 35, 40 minutes, dreamy.
Yeah, I think so as well. And that's what we planned. Both Connor and I, we both planned that the shows need to be, that was what we wanted to hit. So yeah, 35, 40 minutes, both shows.
So can you give me the details about We Are Monsters and Glass? Like where are they on? When are they happening?
Absolutely. So We Are Monsters and Glass are happening at the Barons Court Theatre. First show is on the 24th of October and runs until the 4th of November, Tuesday to Saturday. And as a little extra bit, we do have a show that's actually on Halloween. So that'll be on the 31st of October. And we are inviting people to come along to that in costume. And there'll be a little party at the end of the show where people can, come up and chat with us. And there'll be a little costume competition. There'll be food and drink as well. And it's all involved in your ticket. There's no extra. So it's if you have somewhere to spend, if you want to spend somewhere in your Halloween, why not with us?
That sounds absolutely incredible. I would love more than anything to come up and see it on Halloween, but I can't come up and see it on Halloween because I'm also doing a show, but I am coming to see it and I'm very excited to come and see it. I can't wait. I love seeing theatre that is written by people who are involved in it and new theatre and new shows, and I'm so excited. Joe, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Well, thank you for having me, Emma. Honestly, it's been
Um,
great.
where can people find you on socials before we go?
Yeah, so you can find my actors on Instagram, Joseph Ryan-Hughes, and but for the theatre company, you'll hear everything about the show if you just put in Just a Regular House. We have a website, justaregularhouse.com, and our Twitter is JRHProds, and our Instagram is Just a Regular House Productions. So you can find everything on those socials.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.
No worries. Thank you, Emma.